So, you think the rat race, that endless cycle of work, bills, and chasing a future that never quite arrives, starts when you get your first job. I'm here to tell you that the training begins much, much earlier. It starts with the sound of a bell in a school hallway. From our very first day, we are quietly initiated into a system that values following rules and obeying authority above all else. We learn to raise our hands before we speak, to ask for permission to move, and to accept the information given to us without much question. This isn't necessarily a conspiracy, it's just the way the system was built, and it has profound effects on how we see the world and our place within it. This system has deep historical roots, stretching all the way back to the Industrial Revolution. Back then, factory owners needed a workforce that was disciplined, punctual, and comfortable with repetitive tasks. The modern public school system was largely designed to meet that need. It was an assembly line for producing compliant workers, not a garden for cultivating creative, independent thinkers. The philosopher Ivan Illich pointed this out in his book, De-Schooling Society. He argued that we've been taught to mistake the process of schooling for the act of learning, and to believe that a diploma is the same as competence. In this model, the goal isn't to ignite a child's curiosity, but to mold them into a predictable and useful part of a larger economic machine. Think about the structure of a typical school day. It's governed by a strict schedule, broken into short, disconnected periods. A bell rings, and you move from math to history not because you've finished learning but because the timetable says so. This teaches you to switch your attention on command and to see knowledge as a series of separate boxes to be checked. We are rewarded not for genuine understanding or passion, but for our ability to memorize facts, follow instructions, and reproduce the correct answers on a test. This entire framework subtly conditions us to find motivation not from within, but from external sources of approval, like a gold star or a good grade. This conditioning creates a powerful psychological pattern. We learn to compete with our peers for a limited number of A grades, just as we will later compete for a limited number of promotions. We are taught to fear failure, seeing it as a final judgment on our worth, rather than a natural part of the learning process. The philosopher Michel Foucault made a brilliant observation about this. He noted that institutions like schools, prisons, and factories all share a similar logic of control and surveillance. They are all spaces where an authority figure watches over you, dictates your movements, and punishes you for not complying. This early training in obedience and conformity shapes our minds long before we ever punch a time clock. The transition from school to the professional world often feels like a huge leap, but if you look closely, the underlying structure is almost identical. The patterns we learned in the classroom don't just disappear, they are simply given new names and applied to our adult lives. That jarring alarm clock that wakes you up for work. It's just the adult version of the morning school bell, a signal that your time is no longer your own. You are expected to show up at a specific time, perform tasks assigned to you by someone else, and stay until you are officially dismissed. The rhythm of your life is dictated by an external schedule, just as it was when you were a student. Your teacher, who once held the power to validate your efforts and judge your performance, has now been replaced by your boss. This new authority figure sets your goals, monitors your progress, and ultimately determines your success within the organization. And what about those grades you worked so hard for? They've transformed into performance reviews, bonuses, and the possibility of a promotion. We continue to chase these external rewards, believing that a higher salary or a better job title will finally bring us that elusive feeling of fulfillment. We spend our days trying to please our superiors, just as we once tried to please our teachers, hoping for that stamp of approval that tells us we are doing a good job. This creates what the sociologist Max Weber called an iron cage of rationalization. We become trapped in a system that is obsessed with efficiency, productivity, and control. In this cage, life becomes a series of tasks to be completed and metrics to be met. Creativity, spontaneity, and personal meaning are often sacrificed for the sake of predictable outcomes. Think about it. A student who asks too many why questions might be seen as disruptive, just as an employee who constantly challenges the company's methods might be labeled as not a team player. The system rewards those who fit in and follow the established procedures, not those who dare to think differently. The result is a subtle but powerful shift in our very definition of self-worth. We begin to adopt what the psychologist Erich Fromm called a having mode of existence, where we define ourselves by what we possess. our job title, our income, our house, our car. This is a stark contrast to a being mode, where our identity is rooted in our experiences, our relationships, and our inner character. The rat race thrives on this having mode, constantly pushing us to acquire more status symbols and achievements. We become human doings instead of human beings, always running toward the next goalpost, without ever stopping to ask if the race itself is making us happy. Just when you thought the rat race couldn't get any more intense, along came the digital age to expand the maze into a 24/7 global marathon. The factory floor and the office cubicle have now been extended into our pockets and our homes through our smartphones. The philosopher Byung-Chul Han calls our era the Burnout Society. He argues that the old model of a boss forcing you to work has been replaced by a much more effective form of control. We now exploit ourselves. We feel a constant internal pressure to be productive, to optimize our time, to build our personal brand, and to always be on. The master isn't shouting at us anymore. The master's voice is inside our own heads. In this new digital landscape, our attention has become the most valuable currency. Algorithms on social media, news feeds, and streaming platforms are designed to capture and hold our focus for as long as possible. This creates a new form of control through constant distraction. We are conditioned to chase the fleeting validation of likes, shares, and follower counts. The sociologist Jean Baudrillard talked about the idea of simulacra, where we start chasing the image of something rather than the real thing. We curate an online persona that looks successful and happy, often at the expense of our actual, real-world fulfillment. The rat race is no longer just about work. It's a relentless performance for an invisible digital audience. This relentless pressure to perform and self-optimize leads directly to burnout. We were promised that technology would make our lives easier and give us more leisure time, as the economist John Maynard Keynes once predicted. Yet many of us are working longer hours and feeling more exhausted than ever before. The system has a clever way of rewarding efficiency with even more demands. If you answer emails quickly at night, you are rewarded with more emails at night. The finish line is always moving further away, and the feeling of enough becomes impossible to achieve. This constant striving creates a deep underlying anxiety and a sense of emptiness. This emptiness, however, can be a powerful signal. The psychologist Viktor Frankl, a survivor of the Holocaust, argued that the primary drive in our lives is not pleasure, but the discovery and pursuit of what we personally find meaningful. He believed that much of modern anxiety and depression stems from a spiritual vacuum, a lack of purpose. When we spend our lives chasing external rewards that society tells us are important, grades, money, status, likes, we neglect our own inner need for meaning. That feeling of burnout and emptiness is often the first sign that we are waking up to the fact that the race we are running was not one we chose for ourselves. So how do we escape a race that has been ingrained in us since childhood? The first and most important step is awareness. You have to see the cage before you can find the door. The psychologist Carl Jung famously said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." Recognizing these patterns, the bell, the grades, the boss, the likes, is not about blaming the system, it's about understanding how it has shaped you. This awareness is the moment you stop running on autopilot. It's the moment you realize that the compulsion to compete and seek approval can be transformed into a conscious choice. You can finally ask yourself, is this really what I want? Once you have that awareness, the next step is to realign your actions with your own core values. This requires asking some deep and sometimes uncomfortable questions. What would you do if grades, money, and social approval didn't exist? What activities make you feel genuinely alive and engaged, not just productive? This is about shifting from external validation to internal motivation. It might mean pursuing a hobby just for the joy of it, with no intention of monetizing it. It could mean defining success not by your job title, but by the quality of your relationships or your contribution to your community. This process of alignment is about consciously choosing your own finish line, based on what truly matters to you. This journey also requires you to actively reclaim your most precious resources, your time, your attention, and your mind. In a world designed to distract you, choosing to focus is a radical act. This might mean setting firm boundaries with technology, unsubscribing from the noise, and creating space for quiet reflection. It means seeking stillness in a culture that celebrates constant motion. When you reclaim your attention, you reclaim your power to decide what is important. You start pursuing things for their intrinsic value, learning for the sake of understanding, creating for the sake of expression, and connecting for the sake of genuine human contact, rather than for a reward at the end. Ultimately, breaking free from the rat race is an internal job. The external world, with its demands and expectations, may not change, but as Viktor Frankl wrote, the one thing that can never be taken from us is the freedom to choose our attitude in any given set of circumstances. The external race for money and status loses its power when the internal race for validation and approval ends. The goal isn't necessarily to quit your job and live in the woods, though for some, it might be. The true goal is to move through the world with awareness, to make choices that are aligned with your soul, and to build a life of purpose, one conscious decision at a time, and that is a race worth running.